Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Crafting and Crime Daily. It's Saturday. This is the show where I recap live trials, currently covering the case of Arizona, Save Arizona versus Michael Turney. And we're going to cover what happened on Thursday. There was no court on Friday. They're not doing court on Fridays. They don't start in the mornings until 10:30, and then they're done by 4:30, and they're not having court on Friday. I don't think there's a lot more the prosecution is going to put on. I think we'll talk about that later, but the two officers have taken the stand. The lead detective, who's no longer a police officer, he's retired, and Detective Anderson, who is still with the police department and is currently sitting at the prosecution table as a representative of the police department. They always have a representative from the investigating agency at the defense at the prosecution table. So that's what's going on here. So Detective, I think his name is Schoenfeld, and then Detective Anderson. Anyway, we're going to recap what they had to say in this case. But first, let me show you what I'm working on. And no, you didn't get a Friday dance. You're not going to get one today either, because this is kind of sheer what I'm wearing here because it is so hot outside. I will give you a Friday dance next Friday. I'm working on another gnome for my gnome blanket. This is the scuba diving gnome. Almost done with her. Look how cute is she. There's her little, mouthpiece that they wear. Then she's got the goggles on. So I use this color to sort of mimic her looking out at the ocean. It kind of has like a little sparkle to it. So it's different than this color, which is a light blue. This is more like a teal with a sparkle to it. So she's looking out at the ocean, and she's got her pink bathing suit on, and she's going scuba diving. I know. It's going to be the cutest blanket. I think this is square number 9, because some months I'm doing more than one square. I don't know if I'm going to get another square done this month. I might. Today's the 14th. Maybe I will. I could do like a patriotic one. I haven't done one of those yet. We'll see. Anyway, let's talk about the evidence in this Michael Turney case. So the lead detective, we're going to continue with his testimony. Both were quite lengthy, both of these witnesses, but I wrote down stuff that we didn't already know. Now, one thing that we didn't know, that they got the cell phone records from Dodd and Alissa, and there was several phone calls on the day that she disappeared. One at 10:05 that lasted 1 minute, and that was from Dodd to Alissa. One at 10:30, these are in the morning. 10:30 that morning, that was a 1 minute call from Dad to Alissa. And then at 1:09 p.m., there was a 7-minute phone call. Now, yeah, fly on the wall. I'd love to know what that phone call was all about, because supposedly he picked her up early from school, took her to lunch, dropped her off at the house. Then when he comes back after picking up Sarah, it's dark. He says he has contradicting statements. In some statements, he said after he picked her up from her friend's house and got home, it was dark. Some statements, he says he got home about 4:30, and they looked up in the almanac, what time it would have been dark on that particular day, March 17th of 2001, and it would have been about 7 p.m. So he had an awful lot of time from picking her up from school early that day until he picks up Sarah, in which he could have murdered his daughter and got rid of the body. I don't know. So they talked a little bit about Michael Turney himself. He had been in the Army from 1968 to 1970. He had been a police officer for a short period of time, and after that, a private investigator. Now, this detective was asked about runaways, and he said typically a runaway usually returns home, or the case is resolved within a week, a couple of weeks. Now, Detective Anderson was asked that same question, and he said pretty much the same thing. Within a few days, some weeks, or on a rare occasion, 4 or 5 months. But he said then that's when you need to start paying more attention, when they've been missing for that long period of time. So then the detective was shown the ABC primetime clips, or the jury was shown these clips. Primetime in 2009 did a segment on Alissa Turney, the disappearance of Alissa Turney, and it was John Quinones interviewing Michael Turney. And so they showed a few clips. One of the clips they showed was the same one that I showed you, where she gets into an argument with her boyfriend and she throws her cell phone, and you can hear the tires squealing out of the driveway. And what we know about that video is that it was either taken on the day before she disappeared on the 16th, or on the 6th, either March 6th or March 16th. Because if you look at the side of the VHS, that there's a number, it's kind of faded. It says 5, there's a faded, then you see the 6, and then you see the 2001. So we don't know if it was 6 or 16 that she had this argument with her boyfriend. And then there was a clip where he was asked if he ever sexually molested his daughter. And he, of course, denied that he ever sexually molested his daughter. Then, after this lead detective was finished with his testimony, the jurors are allowed to ask questions in this case. And I love when the jury asks questions. So here are the questions they ask. Why did it take 7 years to search Alissa's belongings? And then they wanted to know what work had been done by the prior detective. And he said, none. None. Between him and Anderson, who comes on the stand next, apparently there was a file created when Alissa went missing in 2001. The home was never searched. No one was ever interviewed. The neighborhood was never canvassed. No phone records were obtained. Nothing. Nothing. According to Detective Anderson, the folder has no supplemental reports in it. Anytime you do a follow-up to a case or you interview someone, you do a supplemental report. He said there is no supplemental reports in the original case. Versus when Anderson is on the stand, he happens to mention, because he asked the defense attorney, what page or what supplement are you looking at with reference to a certain question? And he told him, he says, well, mine is Bates stamped. Bates stamps is where you take the stamp and number each page of the police report. He mentioned that this police report was a couple of thousand pages long with all the supplemental reports, over 200 interviews of witnesses, neighborhoods canvassed, phone records obtained, DNA samples obtained, handwriting samples obtained. That's all in there. This detective made the comment that this police report was longer or thicker than War and Peace. I thought that was funny. Anyway, back to the jury questions. So they wanted to know, why 7 years? What happened? And he says, there was just nothing done on this file. So how did it all of a sudden in 2007? Why were you investigating then? So this detective commented that at that point there was a new supervisor, and he was looking at older cases, and he said this one needed some work. You think? Yeah. Then the jury wanted to know if there was any other video or audio tapes that had copies, because the videotape where Alissa had this argument with the boyfriend and she throws the phone. There was a copy they found, they were given a copy by Michael Turney, but they also, when they searched Michael Turney's home, found another copy of that. And he said, yes, there were other videotapes and audio tapes where there were duplications. I don't know what the significance of that is, but that's the way it was. Then Detective Anderson, he took the stand, and I love this guy. I mean, he's so articulate and he explains things very, very well, and it just in a way that holds your interest. So one thing that was mentioned, and I wondered how, 400 to 500 videotapes and audio tapes, how in the world? And he said they went through every single one of them, but how they did it was through volunteers. They had a whole bunch of civilian volunteers, and they did a round table, and they each were assigned a certain amount of tapes to listen to. And then if they heard anything, and they were given a synopsis of the case and what they were looking for. And so, but if they heard anything on those tapes that they thought the detectives needed to hear, then they would bring it to Detective Anderson, and he would personally listen to that tape or view that surveillance. That's how they were able to get through all of that video and audio tape. Then he mentioned the search. Now, it never came out about the weapons. It just didn't come out. But what was interesting was that they they went to the old home, which is across the street from their new home, the home that they were renting, because apparently when they moved across the street, they actually purchased that home. Michael Turney did. But when they were renting, so he said there were other renters there, and they were nice enough to vacate the home and let us conduct a search. They searched with luminol. Luminol will show them where there's any blood evidence or evidence that someone trying to clean up blood, any kind of bodily fluids. They did not find a thing. Now, this is 8 years later, but you might expect it to still be there. They also brought in cadaver dogs, and cadaver dogs are trained to identify any decomposition. And decomposition, he explained to the jury that decomposition starts at the time someone dies. The minute you die, your decomposition starts, and it will continue till everything is, ashes to ashes. Everything has gone back into the earth. So these cadaver dogs did not identify anything at either home. So then he talked about the $300 that was mentioned in the note that she left, that she took $300 from her father. Michael Turney told the detectives she actually took $1,200. Then we get questions about the contracts. I showed you the contracts in the other episode, one of the other episodes. This guy said this was a real oddity to him. He had never seen anything like it in all of his years as a detective, even in domestic violence. He says, I've never seen anything like these contracts. Then they played a phone call between Michael Turney and his son, Michael Seth Turney. Now, the thing about this phone call is that we don't know when it occurred, because a lot of these tapes were not marked, not identified as to what they were. But he's clearly discussing his frustration with Alissa, that she's done something 4 or 5 times. He doesn't say what it was she did, but now he's inclined, he wants to call the police on her. And if he says if he calls the police, he's going to lose his home, and he's going to go to jail, and he's going to have to pay thousands of dollars to get out of jail. But it wasn't clear to me what she was doing that was causing this angst in her father. And he was so, let me just warning here. If you've got children in here, I'm going to use some language I don't usually use, and it's not me. I'm just quoting what he said during this phone call. He actually called Alissa A stupid ass fucking bitch. My jaw hit the floor when I heard that. I would never say something like that about my children. No, never. No. And then later on, he says, you know what? I'm just going to eliminate the problem, and I'm the problem, and I'm going to blow my effing brains out. Now, he used the actual word. And then he called her boyfriend sucker. What? This is the way this guy talks, and it's disgusting. Now, does that mean he murdered his daughter? No, but it's why are you talking like that about your kids? It's gross and it's disgusting. Yeah. Okay. So then they played a call between Alissa and her aunt, and they could not identify when this call took place either, except to say during this phone call, she mentions that she is 17 years old now. And she turned 17 in March, and this happened in May. I'm getting my dates mixed up. But in any case, she had been 17 for about a 6-week period of time before she goes missing. So sometime during that 6 weeks prior to her disappearance, this phone call took place. And in this phone call, apparently Alyssa's dad, Michael Turney, had called Lynette. No, we didn't get that phone call, but he had called Lynette and he was freaking out. Now, maybe the phone call happened on his cell phone because we know he was recording all the house phone stuff. So she was asking Alissa, why is your dad freaking out? Is everything okay? And she's in a very interesting frame of mind. She's like, yeah, everything's fine. That's just dad. That's the way he is. And she said, promise me you're okay. Please promise me, and she's like, I promise you I'm okay. Now, did she say that to her aunt because she knew the phone call was being recorded? I mean, if she had said she wasn't okay, hey, no, I'm not okay. Dad's sexually abusing me, and calling me names, he would have known that. In fact, he walks into the room during this phone call. You can hear him talking. So, but she didn't act like she was in any kind of distress. And her aunt says, listen, I'm here for you. Anytime you want to come visit, just let me know. But they interviewed Lynette. That Lynette was her mom's sister. Her mom, Barbara, died in 1993. This was her mom's sister, and her mom's sister is now deceased, so she has not been a witness in this case. But we know that she did not go to California to be with her aunt, Lynette. Now, one of the things that was searched was the old truck. Remember, I told you he got rid of that truck. He sold it and got an identical truck. Yeah. Well, they went and they found the old truck, and Detective Anderson said, I personally searched it. It was somewhere else in Nevada, somewhere. And he said he did find some stuff. He said he found some documents with Michael Turney's name on it, but nothing relevant to the case. And it was not searched by cadaver dogs. He said they didn't have any cadaver dogs available. So one of the comments he made was regarding the prior investigation. He said it was the most anemic file I've ever seen. In other words, just nothing in it. He said there were notes on the actual file, the outside of the file, but no reports in the file. They did nothing, absolutely nothing, for 7 years or 6 years, 7 years. Anyway, he was also asked, you know, isn't it true you don't have a body? You have no physical evidence that she's dead. He says, yes, but I believe she's dead. And he goes, but you don't know that. She could still be alive. And he says, well, I don't believe in UFOs or alien abductions. I believe she's dead. Okay. Then the defense was talking about that California phone call. And it was asking him how this recording device worked. So the defense wants the jury to believe that it would only record calls that were picked up on one particular phone, the one that was out in the kitchen area. That if you picked up the phone call from the bedroom, for example, like the call from California that came at 5 o'clock in the morning, that it wouldn't trigger the recording. I don't know. So that's it. That is it for these two detectives. That's the evidence. That's all we have. I I don't think I don't like this guy. I think he talks disgustingly. I think he's a weirdo. With all those weapons, you know, do I think he killed his daughter? I don't think there's any evidence of that. She's gone. Detective Anderson is confident that she's dead. He said, there's no way. We have checked social securities. There's never been, her social security number has never been used anywhere for a job. She's never tried to get a driver's license. And he even used iterations of her name. He spelled Alissa different ways. He used her father's last name. He used her dead friend's name in case maybe she was using her dead friend's name. He used all different kinds of ways to search, and she's not out there. She's not there. Plus, you have the national databases where when bodies are found, it's put into this database. Their DNA is obtained. It's put into this database. Nothing has ever come back to Alissa. Nothing. Okay. Yes. Now, there was a hearing yesterday in the boat crash case from, we're going over to Alex Murdaugh in South Carolina. I just thought I'd mention, I did listen to, there was some motion hearings yesterday that I listened to, and they were quite interesting. Now, I don't know if you recall Paul Murdaugh, one of the people that Alec Murdaugh is in jail or in prison for murdering. He murdered his wife and son, and he was found guilty of those murders. Well, Paul Murdaugh was involved in this boat crash. He was driving this boat with 5 other teenagers, older teenagers. They got drunk. The only people left in this lawsuit, it's a civil lawsuit. When they crashed the boat, Mallory Beach was ejected from the boat. Her body was found about a week later, deceased. This is a civil lawsuit against a whole bunch of people. All the Murdaugh entities, the estate of Paul Murdaugh, his brother Buster Murdaugh, his dad Alec Murdaugh, the people where they had gone to an oyster roast. Those people were in the suit. They had stopped at a bar to drink. That called Casey's. They were involved in the lawsuit. And then this gas station where he used his brother's driver's license and obtained beer, called Parker's. Now, Parker's is the only one left, except for Alex. Everybody else is out of this. One of the things they did yesterday during that hearing was they dismissed the estate of Paul Murdaugh because there's no money in that estate. There's nothing to be gained by suing the estate of Paul Murdaugh. So the only people left are Alex Murdaugh, Buster Murdaugh settled, the oyster roast family settled, the bar where they stopped to drink, they settled. Parker has not settled, and Alex Murdaugh have not settled. So it's proceeding to trial against these two entities. So one of the motions was to sever these two defendants. Parker is saying, I don't want to, it's two different cases. It is the same set of facts and circumstances, which is why you should keep them together. But the allegations against Alec Murdaugh are for essentially bad parenting, negligent supervision of your child, allowing him to take his brother's driver's license and obtain beer and go out on this boat and recklessly drive this boat. Whereas the charges against Parker are for failing to follow your own company policy by accepting this fake ID. And, two different, the jury's going to have to consider two very different charges here. So the attorney for Parker's was arguing that the defendants should be settled. There should be a trial against this defendant and a trial against this defendant. And the judge said no. Because one of the things they have in this state, and they have it in a lot of states, is called joint and several liability. So what that means is if you get a verdict where they say this guy is 99% liable and this guy is 1% liable. Well, the guy that's 1% liable is still responsible for the entire verdict. This is why they wanted it severed, because he says, Alec Murdaugh, everybody knows Alec Murdaugh all over the world. They know that he was convicted of murdering his wife and son and that he's not a good person. And they're going to possibly award a large amount of money to this family. And they may apportion a lot of the blame to Alex Murdaugh. And then we're going to end up footing the bill because Alex Murdaugh has no money. I don't know if I explained that properly, because they would be responsible for the entire verdict. Even if they were only found 1% liable, they would be responsible for paying whatever the verdict is. So the judge denied that motion. They're keeping that together. The other thing they argued was change of venue. We should change the venue from the county where it's in now. And the judge said, no, we're not changing the venue. There is nowhere in the world you could try this case where people have not heard of Alex Murdaugh. You're just going to have to rely on the jurors' promise that they can set aside their beliefs and feelings about Alex Murdaugh and follow the law. We have to have faith in the justice system. So, no change of venue, no severance of defendants. So I don't know what the date for that trial is. Sometime in August. It's going to be a good one. It's a civil trial, but it's going to be a good one. Yeah, can't wait to hear that. All right, guys, that's the Saturday edition of the show. I'm going to go back and finish this up so I can get my diamond painting back out, maybe even my cross stitch, because we got still a whole night and day on the weekend. The weekend has just started. Yep, I will see you tomorrow. I'll be live tomorrow at 11 a.m. Let's just chat, talk about crafts, talk about crime, whatever you want to talk about. Be there, 11 a.m. Central Time. If not, I'll see you on Monday in Crafting and Crime Daily. Have a great one. Bye.